Não sei se vocês estão me escutando, porque eu não tenho ninguém para poder testar meu microfone. Provavelmente ninguém está me escutando ainda. A primeira pessoa, quando o Lawrence entrar aqui, a gente vai entrevistar o Lawrence de várias marcas, cara. O Lawrence é uma pessoa muito influente, que contribui bastante com a cena desde o começo. Ele foi um dos primeiros a fazer parte da marca 50-50, que começou com grind plates, depois começou a fazer bases. Ele também, o Lawrence, foi responsável em desenvolver o sistema de montagem de base que nós usamos agora, que é a UFS, junto com a Salomon. E depois ele teve uma grande uma ausência da cena por acho que quase uma década ou mais. E ele voltou agora e voltou com tudo, cara. Ele é muito influente, tem várias marcas aí dentro desse guarda-chuva que ele tem, que chama. Da distribuição dele é o Royal, desculpa, não é Royal, não, como é que chama? Balance Distribution, que tem a Chroma Wheels, tem a Compass, tem a 50-50, e agora tem a Standard. Ele está com uma marca nova de patins, chama Standard, e vamos conversar com ele para ver, né, qual que é a ideia que ele teve de fazer esses patins. Tem algumas coisas legais que ele incrementou no design desses patins, que é uma coisa, de uma certa forma, é novo. Ele não reinventou a roda, não, como ele mesmo disse, mas ele trouxe ideias de vários patins que ele foi usando, testando ao longo desse tempo. Ele colocou tudo junto num patim só. Então, a gente vai trocar ideia com ele aqui para ver, né, como que ele vai explicar, né, para a gente como ele teve as ideias que ele teve. Esperar ele entrar aqui e o pessoal ainda entrando também. Sei que é um horário bem diferente, ainda bem complicado no Brasil aí, né? Sábado à noite o pessoal tá indo pra balada. Mas vamos ver. Logo, logo a gente vai entrar com ele aqui. Vamos esperar dar o horário certo que eu mando para ele o link. Vamos lá. People gonna start coming. Uhum. Ele entrando aí. But, well, it's gonna be recorded. Never. Aqui tem como pausar, não, né? Esperando aí. Daqui a pouco ele entra. Eu também já fiz o meu pedido do Standard, que chama Omni. Vai chegar, eu acho que em janeiro agora. Janeiro? Sim, em janeiro. E eu pedi só o Shell. Tem uma das coisas que foi bem legal que ele fez foi disponibilizar logo da fábrica a possibilidade de você comprar só o Shell, que seria só a bota, sem a bota interna. E então ajuda bastante quem já tem tudo, né? Então, eu comprei só o shell, que eu já tenho minha bota interna, já tenho minha base, minhas rodinhas, já sei como vou usar. Então, comprei só o shell mesmo, que é o shell e o sole plate. Vamos esperar ele entrar aí, que a gente troca ideia com ele. Daqui a pouco ele deve estar aí. Enquanto isso, vamos esperando um pouco. Uma das coisas legais que tem no Woman Skate também, no Woman Skates, né, também é a possibilidade que você tem de checar o tamanho certinho da bota, tanto da bota de plástico, que é o shell, ele disponibiliza um desenho, né, do formato da bota, não só de comprimento, mas de largura também, e ele disponibiliza esse desenho para que as pessoas possam imprimir em casa e colocar seu pé bem em cima e ver realmente qual o tamanho apropriado para o seu pé, né? Porque é muito chato você comprar um patins pela internet hoje em dia e o patins vem é grande, muito grande ou pequeno, né? Você acaba tendo que desistir do patins, mandar de volta, tendo que vender e comprar outro, que já aconteceu várias vezes com amigos. Opa, ele tá aí, vamos colocar.
Hello. Hello.
Can you hear me?
I hear you just fine. Can you hear me?
Good. I had no one to check, so I'm checking.
You sound great.
Great. How you doing, sir?
I'm great. How have you been? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah, been good. Now it's 6 o'clock in the morning here.
Oh, Jesus.
Early.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's Japan, so I'm in the future now.
Oh, no way. Yeah, you're all over the place. You've been there a while, haven't you?
Yeah, about 10 years now.
Jeez, man. That's great.
Yeah,
Do you ever plan on leaving, or is that home now?
Now it's home, yeah, for a while, because my family's here, my kids, so everyone is here. So
yeah, that makes
I
sense.
have my parents back home in Brazil, my mom, my dad, and my brothers, but I've been overseas for so long now, for more than 20 years. I used to live in Australia before.
Oh, that's wild. You get around.
Yeah, I went to university in Australia, and then I ended up staying there, getting a job. That's where I met CJ, and we became friends,
Oh, yeah. That's crazy.
So, yeah. I've been living overseas more than I lived in Brazil, so it's quite strange.
Yeah, I bet. It sounds pretty crazy. Do you get back to Brazil often, or is it pretty rare?
Yeah. I try to go every year, but last time that I went last year, 2022.
Okay.
This year I couldn't go, but next year I'll be going there. Yeah.
Nice. That's awesome.
It's quite far.
Yeah, I mean, it's 12 hours from you, give or take, or longer.
By plane? No, it's like. Oh, I mean, I was talking to someone yesterday about it, and to leave my place, my home, and to arrive at my mother's place is 36 hours.
Jesus. That's incredible.
On the plane is 24, 25 hours. I don't go through US, because in the US you have to get the transit visa. You gotta pay like $200. So we go to Dubai or go to somewhere in Europe, and then you go to Brazil.
Interesting.
It's about the same.
Yeah, that's not bad.
It's about the same. Yeah. So what about you? How have you been? You look sharp despite like this crazy 3 years. I bet, right?
It has been
a roller
busy.
coaster of emotions.
Yeah. I'm tired, but I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So it gives me that hope that all this craziness is worth the effort.
Yeah. I think your biggest accomplishment from these 3 years was not the actual skate. It was that you managed to quit drinking. Most of the people start drinking during this time,
Yeah, well, I still drink occasionally. I have a drink before I do my Gear Talk show, because it's harder to speak. I haven't had a drink today, but it's harder to speak like in a flow without having a little bit for me. It's
Yeah,
just
yeah.
I've done it without, and I don't
Mhm.
like the way the shows go. So in that sense, it's kind of like taking a vitamin or taking a Red Bull before something. I'm like, all right, I'll just take a little alcohol, just lubricate the throat a little bit.
No, you're right. You're right. Everyone needs. I'm drinking a lot of coffee right now, black coffee. So
Oh,
to get,
nice.
yeah, yeah. But yeah, man, yeah. I ordered my skates, and I found out yesterday or the day before yesterday that I got the refund from it because I think here in Japan, um, if it takes longer than a month after using your credit card to buy to purchase something, you have
Hmm.
to get a refund. So
Oh, I didn't
I
know
guess
that.
I have. Yeah, I didn't know that too. I bought through
Yeah,
Sena
yeah,
skate shop.
Seba. Yeah. Senna, yeah.
Yeah, Sena. Yeah. So my friend who also ordered his one from the same place, he say, "Oh, we got the refund from Sena." I was like, "What do you mean we got the refund from Sena?" He
Oh,
say, and then
yeah.
he explained to me what happened. But I mean, it's still like our name is on the line to get it.
Yeah,
I
it's
guess.
normal. It's kind of like a down payment, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
I was speaking with Ken earlier this week, and he's
Hmm.
excited to see them. They should be here. He'll get them sooner than we will, because they'll ship from the factory direct to Cenoramp. So
Yeah,
it
yeah.
will be, them and Wheel Love and, a few other shops in Asia will get them before we'll get them here.
Oh, really? So it
Yeah.
should be like a mid-January, I guess, right?
Yeah. So they're wrapping up production now, and then they'll ship right away. So yeah, it should
Hmm.
be mid-January, maybe late January. It just depends. I mean, we're trying to get it before Chinese holiday. That's the biggest thing, because then they shut down for like a month, during
Oh,
New
which is
Year's. Uh,
February, right?
yeah, exactly. So it's like we've got to finish everything up before the end of January, otherwise we'll lose a lot of time.
Yeah, so that's my question for you. You've been doing this for so long, right?
Mhm.
It's for like 30 years now
Well,
doing
I
skate.
mean, so I took a lot of time off. So I started when
Yeah,
I
yeah.
was, I started skating when I was 14, 15. So that was like
Hmm.
93, maybe. And then I was in the industry for about 10 years after that. And, I took a break from 2005 and came
Hmm.
back in 2017. So maybe a 10-year, 12-year break. And then I started up, Fitty Fitty in 2018. And then it's just kind of snowballed since then.
You have a lot of experience. So, is there anything from designing a skate that you underestimate?
Yeah. I mean, I did a show on Gear Talk a couple days ago talking about how we've open sourced our sole plate. So
Hmm.
I've been, I came to the realization that I think the sole plate makes the biggest impact to how well the skate grinds. You can swap out frames and really, when you're doing front sides, royales, unities, things like that, it doesn't really matter what the frame is. I guess it can, but really, people can do all of those groove tricks on any setup. It could be completely stock frames. It could be big wheel skates. I mean, you see people doing, Savannahs on 4x90 skates. Like groove tricks aren't really a good test, but royales are a good test, backslides, torques, things like that, and soul tricks, topsides. Those are really good tests of what a grind would be with a aggressive skate. So a soul plate was for me the biggest challenge. We knew we really needed to nail that design, and there were a lot more considerations with making a soul plate than any frame that I've ever done. A frame it's like if you picture just a block of wood and you can look at it from the side and you can say, okay, I can easily see how I can make this block of wood into a frame. You drill your holes and then you turn it a little bit and then you route out little areas for the wheels and then you flip it upside down and you drill holes for it to mount to your boot. And that's essentially a frame. And then obviously it gets more complicated when you add grooves and when you add support and things like that. But a sole plate is this 3D, like it's like designing a shoe, really. And trying to get all of those contours right, trying to get the angles right so that it doesn't look like from the beginning, we really wanted to avoid. I'm sure some of the sole plates out there. that look of, there's just this big flat block of like a cutting board that they mounted to the bottom of the boot. And then they said, here's your sole plate. And we wanted to, like, that was the furthest thing from what we wanted. It needed to feel like attached part of the skate. Actually, the Mesmer sole plate was a very big inspiration, not from a look and feel. We didn't copy any of their designs or anything like that, but the way that that sole plate fits on the skate, it just looks so like part of the skate. It really blends in. So that was something that we were striving for. We really loved that design, and that took a lot longer than I realized. I'm pretty good with design, but this took a lot more skill than I had. And I had to do a lot of courses, online courses, to learn how to design a sole plate that would do what we wanted it to do. There are so many different techniques you can use to do 3D modeling. And this was one that I just didn't have any experience there at all. So that was very intimidating. It took, 3 months of working on it, an hour a night, because I still have a full-time job. So every night I would just get my laptop and just, poke away at it, send it to the team, and then say, hey, I'm making progress here. What do you think of this? What do you think of that? And then they would agree, or, they push back or whatever. And that took, again, it was a back and forth. And then we started printing them and putting them on boots. And then, looking at the look down so that it didn't look like it was this thing that was sticking out in front of your toe. Like, it's really important to us that the skates look good from every angle, because they could look good from afar or when you're doing grinds. But when you're getting up to a ledge or something and you look down, it's got to look good to you. And having like stuff sticking out or just weird angles or like lots of straps that are just like a snowboard binding style, like that wasn't the vision that we had. It needed to feel like, we loved the old rollerblade TRS, the plastic shelled ones, like the Majestic 12s, just like a very, small footprint, very clean silhouette. And it didn't look big. Like, our skates don't look big on the feet. So yeah, that whole thing was completely different. It was a change from functional design to like aesthetic design, which is something that I've never done.
So that, that's what you say. Like, the sole plate situation came along the process, right? But when you sat down and decided to design a skate, what came as a priority for you?
We had a list of things that we wanted to accomplish with this skate. My background being with the back to blading and reviewing every skate on the market, I had a bucket list of things that I loved. And that's where the name Standard initially came from. We looked at every skate and we said, you know what, this skate does this so well. This feature that it brings should be a standard on all skates. And we went down the list and I was like, okay, let's take a look at this skate. And what does it do really well? A good example is the Fifth Element. Fifth Element is a difficult skate to recommend. It's a fairly heavy skate and the sizing is a little funky for some people, but it's a really great lacing area. They use a very thin plastic around the lacing area. And when you skate that skate, if you tie it up tight, you can feel the lacing kind of suck your foot in, and it kind of gives the top of your foot a hug. And I love that in carbon boots. The Adapt is probably the best of that, where it really feels like you slide your foot in, you tie it up, and it's like an athletic sneaker. But the old 908s had a very similar thing, kind of like the Bauer Civilities, where they had those fingers that kind of wrap over the top and they flexed down. And we wanted to do something like that. And that, I feel, is something that should be standard on all skates. The laces should do something. It shouldn't just be this thing that sits on top of your skate that doesn't do anything. They need to be able to tighten it down to flex down so that it keeps your foot from flopping around inside. Little things like that. We just made a list and really just looked at every skate and said, what's good about this skate that we want to make sure that we capture in our skate? And it included wheels, it included sole plates, it included stock frames. It was, you know, things like the weight, things like the liner, and even getting further, saying it should be available boot only. Like, not everybody wants a complete skate. It should be available boot only, and it should be available without a liner, because a lot of people already have a liner that they love. Why are we selling a liner that people, maybe it's a great liner, but people already have a liner? Like, why force a sale on somebody if they're just going to throw them in the closet? It doesn't make any sense. So we had a lot of considerations with this skate. And I mean, we've been working on it for 2.5 years now. So it's been a long process.
Yeah, you mentioned about the UFS mounting system that you created during the 50 times, right? Back in
2001, I think, with Solomon kind of taking the lead on that project, but it was 50/50 and Razors and USD and a few other companies that were involved with that.
Okay, I thought like, oh, maybe he already wanted to create a skate back then. So why he would create a mounting system for frame? I was thinking, did you have any plans back that time?
It was out of reach. I give a lot of credit to John Julio for taking that step and saying, I think Brian Shima did it maybe technically Kato and Toto were, skaters, and they created Rems back when they were, or Remedy back when they were, just starting out. So that definitely is the first in my eyes. But, modern with new molds and everything. I mean, John Julio is kind of the trailblazer to say, I'm a skater and I can do this myself. I don't need a big company that maybe their attention is split between aggressive and recreational and scooters and whatever else brings in the money, right? Quads, things like that. I just want to make skates. And that was one of the things that it was like, we've gotten to this point in the industry that actual skaters are owning skate companies. And then I got really lucky. The factory that I work with for my frames also makes some of the highest quality skates. They focus mostly on carbon skates, but they make all sorts of skates and a ton of recreational skates, but they also make some aggressive skates. And they asked me about it when I was making, I think, my second frame. They were like, do you ever want to make a skate? Let us know, because we have a lot of capacity here that we would, love to help you with. They knew that I was a good customer and that I could do quality products. And they were like, we want to help you. And, that was by far, if I didn't have that connection with a great factory, there's so much to consider. I would have been way over my head.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
It makes me remember that time during the, I think, mid 90s and early 2000, where the skates design were like it was like a over engineered. Do you remember that? It was, it was crazy.
Yeah.
Rollerblade had that.
It wasn't people who knew how to skate. That's the thing.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
They had the
source.
Yeah.
Rollerblade, the one, I don't even know the name. Looks like a RoboCop thing,
There were a few of them. There's the suede, which was kind of the soft boot with this big thing on the bottom. I mean, it was right after the Rossi's, what was that one called? Not the Fifth Element, but after the Fifth Element. I can't remember what it was called.
Q-Thigh?
The Cutie, yeah.
Cutie, right? Or Q-Thigh, yeah. I don't know how to pronounce it. Yeah.
It just, the angles were just thick, and I mean, even USD with the Cyrus and Razors had some,
Legacy,
pretty serious
USD
ones.
Legacy.
USD Legacy. Yeah. There's been a lot of skates over the years that I feel, our skate is fairly over-engineered in a lot of ways, but we've always strived to keep it clean and simple. That was the most important thing, and that, modern skates, I feel like they do that really well. It's a boot with a sole plate and it uses frames. And if you start adding more stuff, that's just more things that could break. It's more weight that you're adding to it, and it's more expense. Trying to keep costs down.
Yep.
Super important nowadays.
And to some degree, maybe it was a good idea that all those companies did that,
Oh yeah.
crazy design. So they get out of the way. Like, all right,
Yeah.
that doesn't work. So we can
Yeah.
go a different direction from here, right?
Totally. You learn. I mean, you got to make mistakes to make better products. And I learned a lot from, again, the experiments that, again, huge credit to Matthias and Andy for sticking with it for so long and trying all of these crazy ideas. You look at the history of ground control, those frames. I mean, there's so many crazy frames that we're now seeing re-brought up with the big replaceable H blocks. Like you look at there's that new Kaiser switch frame, I think it's called. It is shift frame. It is directly like a tribute to the Murda blocks back in the days with the ground control V2s or whatever they were. Like you can see this, it's all cyclical. But now we're using better materials. We've got the designs down, and those shift switch frames, have the rocker that, I mean, it's a much more current and modern design, but you could see where they got the inspiration from.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. One of the things that nowadays that I more pay attention to or come to realization was the cuff of skates. For me, now that we got older, we jump less, but we go around more, like like on transitions, and obviously controlling your skate, having the power transfer and the responsiveness in the right position. I mean, for you, it's very important. For me, and if I change to one skate to the other one, I always realize that the cuff is the main one that's going to control my skates. Despite the fact, of course, if you have a harder frames with it, you get a more like a power transfer. So when it comes to your cuff, was it hard for you to design it?
We got a lot of help from the factory for designing the cuff. I have a shell only. Where's my shell only? I have a shell only here, so you can see the cuff without the liner. So we got a lot of help from the factory. We really went to them and said, we want something that's very clean, that has a V-cut in the back, built in. I love having the deep V-cut in the back. It shouldn't be too tall. I'm not a big fan of the tall cuffs. And it should have the little catch for the lacing area, for the buckle area. We initially wanted the buckles to be riveted on. One of the things that I was pushing for really hard was I wanted to make sure that these were quiet skates. And we got a lot of feedback initially that rivets were a bad idea, because if buckles break, the whole skate is kind of, you got to drill it out, and not a lot of people can do that. So we changed that to replaceable buckles. The buckle is a locking buckle. It's not the most expensive buckle, but it will keep locked for longer, which means that it won't pop open, which means that when you're approaching a ledge and you miss a sole trick, the buckle won't pop open and then you just break your buckle immediately. The material, we've actually been testing it. This is earlier. Our material now is a little bit softer, but it's a fairly supportive cuff. I'm not a big fan of super squishy cuffs. It just feels like at that point you should just, as everybody says, just bend your knees more if you need more of a squishy cuff to do your grinds. But I love just skating. And I feel like this skate isn't just for jumping on ledges. It's for skating. So you could do big wheel stuff with it, as well as, aggressive, as well as topside tricks and such.
You mentioned about the material of the cuff. It's something that you can have as an option in the future, for example, a harder cuff or a softer cuff.
Yeah, so our initial version of the skate is kind of based around what I like, because when we were developing the molds, the first mold that came out was the size 44, which is my size. The team is Brian and Yandi are both size 40, and then Stefan is a size 42. So they haven't had their skates until maybe a month ago. So the first 6 months of this process, it's been me and anybody that I can find that I trust that is a size 44. So we've kind of built this initial launch around the things that I like. The next versions will be around things that the team likes. So we will definitely have signature boots, pro models, whatever you want to call them. Those will be different than the boots that we're releasing now. Little tweaks here and there because we want them to have the skate the way that they like their skates. So we're going to be testing different cuff materials, different lacing, different liners, obviously frames and wheels, but all of that stuff, all of those materials over the next couple of months after we get through this first production, we're going to start testing those materials to see what is best for the way that they like to skate.
Yeah, that's great because I mean, you being able to change the materials, it changes a lot from the skates, just the material itself, right?
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we might do something a little stiffer in the future. We might do something a lot squishier in the future. You know, we wanted to make sure that the molds were perfect. The material is something that we can always change, but the molds are kind of forever. You can tweak things a little bit, but if the sizing doesn't work right for everybody, then it's not really, you can't really do anything about that. You can't change the material easily and make it fit more people. So out the gate, we wanted to make sure that the fit was good, that the design was good. And then now we can start playing with materials, and we can play with materials forever, really. I mean, the molds will be there. We can try completely different materials that we haven't tried. We can try softer and harder materials. Like, really, now's the fun time when we can experiment.
Yeah. The when it comes to the shell, your shell has, like you mentioned, about the soft area similar to the fifth element. It's pretty tall, right? What it seems like.
Tall in what area?
I mean, where the lacing system is.
I don't know if it's taller. Maybe a little bit.
Okay.
It was designed so that when you're putting your foot in, I'll open this buckle. This is a good.
I'm saying that because I'm skating Aeons right now.
Yeah.
Aeons are pretty low. So.
Oh, you mean, yes. There's a lot more height in this area, a lot more height here, because if you lace it down, it sucks you in. But if it's already sucked in, you can't lace it up, you know? So you need to be able to have it open in order for it to close down. A lot of skates already have it closed down. So you have to shove a tennis ball or a baseball or something in there to open it up. This is the opposite. So it's a little bit wider, and then you use the laces to squeeze it down.
Yeah, that's good because I have to use one size up from Aeon just because of that. So my fit is 25.6 or 7, which is quite small.
Sure.
But I'm using a 41, 42 shell for Aeons.
Oh, wow.
Which is the shell is actually 285, I think. So it's quite, it's like a good 3 centimeters.
Is that because your foot is taller inside the shell?
Very tall.
Yeah.
Very tall,
Yeah.
I have to use elastic laces.
I don't. So Aeons are very interesting. It's the one shell that, because it's a unibody design, they've had to make a lot of compromises to get a material that works well for a frame as well as for a boot. We don't have the same material for our frame or sole plate as we do for our boot, and that has given us an opportunity to make the boot a little bit more squishy. You don't want a squishy material for your frame, obviously. So I think the Aeon is a perfect example of what we wanted to avoid when it came to lacing. But it does bring a lot to the table. It's a super light skate. It's a flat heel, so you have the shock absorber. It's got a great frame for flat. There's a lot of great things about the Aeon. But there's also a lot of compromises.
Just the fitting, just the fitting is a bit strange. So I mean, I'm excited because that part of you said it's pretty tall, the toe box.
Yes, the toe box definitely, yeah.
Another thing is you make it available for everyone to download this PDF with size. I think everyone should do that. It should be the standard, right?
Yeah, well, because, I mean, that was the goal, yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, if you go to some skate shops, they provide you with the actual length of the skate, but they don't say the width. So for me, I have a wide fit. I really wide and high arch. So for me, it was very important to make sure that when I put my fit on that paper that you provide, I can see the lines around, so I'm safe. You know?
Well, the width so I'll say that the width is wider than it looks in the PDF. that you print out. The reason is that because if you look at your foot, the length is fairly set. So we know how long your foot is. The width kind of changes. So because it's a 3D thing, it's not just a two-dimensional, this is your foot. So it gets wider in some places and it moves around in other places just because that's the way that feet work. So from the heel to the toe is a really easy measurement for us to illustrate. But from width, I mean, where do you measure, Is it from your pinky toe to your big toe?
Yeah.
Well, some people have a wider foot in the middle than others. So I will say that the width is more generous than the paper makes it look. It's very similar to like a Razor's SL or a Rollerblade Blank from a width perspective. It's not on the level of a Genesis, but it's a more generous width than, like a Majestic 12 or something similar.
Oh, Majestic 12 is another one that I cannot. I used to skate M12s back in 96, I think, before the Soapweight era. And I used to have way bigger there, just to make it fit. If I get my right size, it'll be numb. Yeah, it will be numb in half an hour. Yeah.
That's not okay.
That shot should definitely be the standard, right? Because if you go, I checked, I don't remember the YouTube channel right now, but it was someone that skates urban. He was talking about the sizing, the problem about sizing in inline skating. I think he also does quads, and he was explaining quads have all these systems of sizing more specific. Like, I don't think let's say there is a size of the skates in centimeters, and they create like a weight which is like a B size, A size, C size, so which you can choose. I mean, you can decide, you can check how the weight of your feet. See, okay, my feet is on the A or on the B or on the C.
Smart.
So I think we should do the same here in landscape, right?
I agree. I think that's a great idea.
Right. If you see all the other urban sports, they don't have to deal with with someone's feet, because they got the shoes. The shoes company deal with that, but we don't.
Yeah.
It's very difficult, right?
And they have plenty of options to go into a shoe store and try them on.
Yeah.
It's very rare. I mean, it's easier now, but I have kids. I don't order shoes for them online because I want them to try them on and see which ones feel right. That's a tricky proposition when it comes to skates, but that's the only thing we've got, and again, I always buy one of the other things that I thought, should be standard. I always buy a size 44 in every skate that I review. And the first 5 minutes after putting them on, I have the realization that these skates are too short. These skates are too skinny. These skates hurt my heel. These skates are just right. Like, they should follow whatever the sizing is that they recommend. If it says that it's a 44, the inside of the skate should feel like a 44. And sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes they stick a liner in there that's too short, but the shell is large, and there's no consistency with that. So that, again, is it caused some confusion. I'll be completely honest. When we were putting our sizing chart online, because we list the internal shell length as well as our recommended size if you're buying with a liner. So my shell is a size 44. This is a 44 skate. It is designed for my foot, which is 28.5 centimeters, which is like a standard size 44, maybe 44 and a half, depending on who you ask. The internal measurement of this shell is 29.5 centimeters. So there's 10 additional centimeters inside the shell if you were to take the liner out and just put your foot in there. Obviously, nobody skates like that, but that measurement is useful because if people want to bring a second skin liner or a intuition liner, they want to know how much room do I have inside so that I could use the liners that I already have, and will they fit in this shell? So it helps by adding that. I think Razors does that. I think Them does that. There's a few other brands that do the internal shell sizing, but it also adds a little confusion if we don't have a skate shop that a skater can go to and get those questions answered.
Yeah, it's very difficult, that part of shell, but it helps a lot. The way you do it.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Well, thanks. Yeah.
I had no problem when I put my feet there. I was like, okay, I'm buying this size, you know.
Yeah. Did you end up with a small? It sounds like you should be a small.
Yeah. But I'm gonna use with this skinny boy liners.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, it'll be fine, right? Yeah.
Yeah, it should be 27.1 internal, and you said your foot was like 25.8, so you should be absolutely fine. Yeah.
So you recommend a 10 mil?
10 millimeters is pretty good. With the Intuition V2 or the Intuition Premium, you can get down to 6 mil. I think it just depends on how much toe bonking you're okay with, because if you want the most responsive ride, you are getting that toe as close to the end of the shell as possible. And a lot of people don't mind that, but for me, when I do topside tricks, if I miss, I bonk my toe a lot, and I can feel it if the liner is not padded in the toes, or if it's just too long to fit the end of the shell.
I see. Moving to the liners now, you mentioned about changing the material of the skates, or some things about with the skates for the pro models that you might do in the future, right?
Yeah.
Is that something that you're thinking about the liner too, changing the liner?
Yeah. A lot of our team ride Intuitions, and that's great because we sell skates. We don't sell liners. We sell a whole thing. So ride whatever you want. Like if you look at our skate, the skate is the skate. The liner is great, but it is not what we're about. We're about the shell, the cuff, and the sole plate. Those are kind of our bread and butter. The comfort liners are the ones that come with it. These are the liners that come with it. They are a great liner. They are heat moldable. They have a lace-up lining area with an elastic lacing systems with a drawstring. So you can really dial in that fit, and it makes really comfortable in there. It's got the heel lift in the back. It's got the neoprene toe in the front so that you have a little bit more comfort. And it's really nicely padded around the sides. It's not for everyone, though. Some people like a more responsive liner. Some people like a more dense liner. Absolutely fine. That's why we sell them linerless, shell only. Our riders, some of them love this stock liner. And because we built this stock liner, designed it just for the shell, the inside of the shell fits this liner perfectly. So if you put the liner in, there's no movement anywhere. If you get a aftermarket liner, it's designed as a general purpose liner. It's not going to fit the shell perfectly. So you might get a little bit of movement of that liner in there. You can just put, with our liners, there's the little rubberized foot lining that keeps your foot from moving around a little bit if you put these in a different shell. But you might get a little bit of movement if you were skating an Intuition or something that was a little small for the shell, for example. We would love to do more liners. I love these liners, and I think that the liner market there's a lot of MyFit liners out there, and there's a really huge amount of support for Intuition as a brand. But I feel like there's room to bring out another liner that's at a good price, that's really high quality, that maybe is a little bit more performant. This is more for comfort. If you were doing big wheels, if you wanted more responsiveness, if you wanted more edge control, you might want something that's a little bit more Intuition-y, like a dense liner. That's something that we'll look into in the future. The skaters, when they get their skates, they'll decide what liners they want. And hopefully, by the time we get skaters that want a different liner, we'll have a different liner available for them. But we haven't started working on that liner yet. We're still heads down trying to get the first run done.
I do like a comfy liner too. It's depending on what I'm doing. Like, for example, for your skates, I wasn't sure if I should get the liner because what's the size of the liner for the small skate? For
the small is so it goes to a 3940. It fits directly into the shell. So it would be internal measurement of like 26.1, I think, for length. It's more for, again, it's more for fitting the dual sizing, because it does have that neoprene toe. They are available aftermarket. They're $80 US aftermarket if you ever wanted to buy them in the future. But I would say, I mean, it's always worth getting the stock liner if the stock liner is designed for the skate. Like, you know, if you're skating 909s, get the intuition that comes with them, because that intuition is perfect for your foot in that shell. That's what we've tried to do with our comfort liners. It is perfect for your foot in this shell. If you want to skate your intuitions, though, I mean, more power to you.
Yeah, I that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to buy the boot with the liner, but I wasn't sure if it would fit my foot, the liner size. So I was kind of concerned because I was already getting a very small shell, which is like, oh, that's, so I wasn't sure. So that's why, and I tried with the paper that he provided, and I tried with the skinny boy, and it was perfect. I was like, okay, I have to go with this. But I do change my liner quite often. If I skate more like a let's say a box and then or a P-rail, so I'll be using more a comfy liner. But if I'm going to skate like a mini ramp or big ramps, you know, I'll do more like a stiff liner, which is the recoil liner that I have from my feet. But yeah, it's definitely important to change the liner for one kind of. I mean, I understand some people like to stick with one liner or across too, but I like to change often.
So two things on that. One, I think that Senna is getting extra liners as well, so it's worth. I think what you're doing is the right way to do it. Don't spend more money than you need to. One of the beauties of doing it shell only is that we can keep the price pretty reasonable. And people can bring their own liners, can bring their own frames, and get into an Omni without spending a ton of money. If you feel like you love the skates, then it's probably a good, like when you need liners, give our liners a try. You know, don't spend the money until you need to. Second thing, to your point about skating transitions and bowls and, you know, maybe do whizzer skating or something like that. One of the cool things that we're doing with these skates is because it is a flat sole boot, we have an internal shock absorber. So our shock absorbers are 10 millimeters. So this is the shock absorber. It's 10 millimeters, which means that when you're skating, you have that natural forward lean. So if you look at like a Majestic 12, you can see the heel is a little bit taller than the front. That's just the way that it needs to be in order to feel comfortable. You look at your athletic shoes, the heel is a little bit taller than the front. In our case, we're using 10 millimeters for these first shock absorbers. The shock absorber is 60A. So it's a fairly, you can see the squish, it's a fairly rigid material. A lot of the shock absorbers that come on aggressive skates, like the Aeon, like the USD Carbon, like the Seba CJ, they're 45A, give or take. So they're fairly squishy. This is going to be more of a responsive ride than one of those. But we're also going to add one of those 45A shock absorbers. So the same design, but it's going to be black and it's going to be more squishy. So if you're looking for that comfort sessioning a ledge all day and you just want to skate up to something, jump on, grind, and then have a little bit more of a pillow like feeling when you land, you put in the 45A shocks and you get a little bit more squish. If you want to skate more of a transition, more of a bowl, more carving and stuff, you put in your recall liners, you put in the 60A shock absorber, and then you get more similar to a raised heel boot, but still with a little bit of shock absorption.
I'm definitely one of those guys, the right tool for the right job. I
totally.
Keep changing.
And it's fun. I mean, again, the whole reason I again spoke on this during Gear Talk, there are people out there who just love to skate and they don't care about their gear at all. You know, they will have the worst bearings. You can hear them a mile away and they're falling apart and they've got, you know, 3 anti-rocker wheels because one of them fell out. And they're like, I don't even care. I'm just going to go out there and skate. And that is a thing. Like, go out there and have fun. There are others who love the gear and spend time cleaning their bearings and want to try the new frames and adjust their 60 millimeter wheels from 90A to 88A when they're skating a skate park versus skating street. Like, there are people out there who just get into skating for different reasons. And I'm definitely of the mindset that you can go and skate however you want. Personally, I love breaking down the little weird geeky things about skating and trying all those different frames, wheels, bearings. Like, I want to try everything and just see, well, what makes a difference here? Because I'm not getting that much better at skating. Like, I got to be honest, I'm 47, been skating for 20 plus years. I don't know that I have much more in me, but I know that I can tweak the gear and see, well, is that going to make a difference? Is that a little bit faster? Is that mean that I'm a little bit more comfortable so I can walk the next day? My knees don't hurt. Like, little things like that. I love that potential that we're trying to bring with Omni for customizing that ride.
Yeah, it's same as me. I'm 44 now, but for me, it's more like doing the same grind with different setups, just to see, like you said, just to see how it feels. Wow, this feel better, this one feel better, and then
totally.
and
yeah, it's
about
fun.
The shock absorber, you say that's perfect for me because for many people, I bet, because what I was doing when I was going to skate on that I have to jump and do on the box that I say, I would put 2 USD shock absorbers to get more cushion feeling,
Sure.
And when I was to skate on ramps, I would just take one out. It'll be just one, but because the USD shock absorber, the first one,
the USD on one,
the first one is very slim,
much thinner.
Nowadays it's much thicker.
Yeah.
So it's still okay to put 2 of those. I mean, it's still will be quite a lift, but you can manage to go around that. But now that we have options, that's great.
We will look into making taller shock absorbers. That's some of the feedback that the team had. I prefer the lower ride because I loved the USD 7. I used the USD Carbon. I love the Adapt. Those are all 10 millimeter. They're all fairly low rides. But Stefan loves shock absorbers. He's all about the high heels. And we'll definitely look at making a bigger, taller shock absorber in the future. Because there are people out there who want different things, like, why not offer it? It's not that much more expensive for us. And then have it on our website, and people can buy taller shock absorbers, buy squishier shock absorbers, like throw them in your backpack and then put them in depending on what you want to skate. I love that idea.
Yeah. Giving options to people. That's the best for everyone.
I think so too.
And you are the person who takes the feedback quite seriously. Serious, right? You do like to do things that people like, and even though if it's that small things, like on your gear talk, you say that you're going to provide frames without logo, and I was like, wow, I think it's a bit too far. When I thought at the frame, like, I'm not too far. I mean, I was like, he really care about the feedback,
I mean, I think it's good for business too. I don't want to be just to come across as just a charity. I want to make sure that we sell product. And if people say that they don't want to buy my skates because they can't replace the buckle, that's a problem. I want to make sure that everybody can try the skates. And if people want to buy the frames, but because the logo doesn't match their setup, they don't want to buy the frames, then let's just remove the logo. It's not changing that, for example, is not changing the fact that this is Scott Crawford's frame. It's just Scott Crawford's frame without his logo on it. That doesn't change anything. We'll still give Scott the royalty for it. And we've still got the frames here. And now more people can make that frame work with their setup. It's listening to customers and actually doing what they want within reason. You don't just take their feedback and say, yes, I will do whatever you want, because then you end up with the Tesla Cybertruck. What you want is to say no over and over until you understand that this is a good one. And we say no a lot. We said no a lot when we were designing the Omni, and we came up to a really good balance of these are the things that should be there.
So you mentioned about the buckles. The buckle actually is supposed to be rivet, and now it's going to be with screws, right?
Yeah, exactly. It was just,
Mhm,
something that me personally, I thought wasn't going to be a problem. I don't break buckles.
mhm,
It could be because, I don't do a lot of topside tricks. It could be because I don't miss a lot of soul tricks. And I figured that if we had a locking buckle, it would just stay locked and we wouldn't have the problem. But
mhm,
people skate differently than I do. And that's why getting more eyes on things and getting more feet in our skates really helps figure out how the skate should be eventually. So that's what production and development is all about, is taking in feedback and trying new things. And is the, screwed on buckle going to make much of a difference? No. I mean, it wasn't any sound issue. And if there is, you can always tighten those screws. But the
mhm.
big benefit is if it breaks for whatever reason, you could just go get another buckle and replace it. And then you don't lose, a skate that you would now have to drill out or something like that.
Do you think that is because you have I see that as an advantage from other companies, which is,
Mm.
like you say, you have your own job, which is totally not connected to skate.
Mhm.
So probably you're doing what you're doing right now. Obviously, you don't want to lose any money, but there is more passion and decisions that you would take that probably other companies wouldn't take because they were. Do you think that's an advantage for you?
I think it's an advantage, yeah, I think it's a different perspective that I can take.
Hmm.
I I don't know that it's I don't know that what the decisions that I make are different than the decisions that they should make, but it might be easier for me to make those decisions because I don't have I don't have this as my single source of income. I
Hmm.
think that anybody in skating can tell you that it is a very difficult industry to make money in. You look at video producers, magazines, skate companies, wheel companies. It's a hard business to break even. I don't
Hmm.
know of any skating event. I think Winter Clash might be the only one that actually makes money after all is said and done. And you know that those people putting on the events are not getting paid what they deserve. If
Hmm.
you were working with the X Games, when we were working with the X Games, we got paid to judge, we got paid to fly to the location, we got food on site, and I guarantee that nobody's getting paid to fly to judge a competition anymore, unless you're maybe part of FEAS, um,
Hmm.
and that is only because they have huge sponsors that can front the bill. It's a really difficult business. I definitely have an advantage that I got into it because I love skating. I didn't get
Hmm.
into it to make money. But in saying that, I do hope to start hiring people. We do have people who work for us. So I'd love to continue making money so that I can keep them employed. Um, as we get bigger and as the skates become more of my time, I'm not going to have more hours in the day from my regular job. I have a full-time job. So the things that I can do at night and on weekends are still very limited, but there's more to do. So hiring more people, getting people to help with marketing, with
Hmm.
day-to-day, operations, shipping, things like that. That's where the money really is important to me. And, that's where I think decisions need to be made that are best for the company. But up until this point, we've been very fortunate to just make decisions that we felt were right. Um,
Hmm.
and I don't think that's ever going to change. It might be
Hmm.
easier to make those decisions. Like a good example is we had with the Chroma anti-rocker wheels, we had an issue with the wheels that were wearing way too fast. The material, because we were pouring, we don't make them anymore. Again, time, we just don't have the time anymore, but we were pouring them in house and they were great anti-rocker wheels. And we tested them for months and they worked great. When we went into mass production, we ordered bigger quantities of the resin for creating the urethane. And that bigger quantity was a slightly different formula than the smaller quantities. So the samples were wearing great. The mass production ones were wearing fast, like they were wearing like grind plates, like frames. And we had to make the decision that we were just going to refund everybody and start over. And that would have been a very difficult decision, I think. It wasn't a ton of money, but it's money that's already been spent that we now have to come up with. But the right decision was these people purchased a product that doesn't do what they were told would do. How do we make it right? How do we get them wheels that they want? And, it was kind of an obvious choice. But I could see if, money were tighter that, or you were relying on it, that you wouldn't make that decision.
No, well, we are lucky for that because you can take the decisions you want, right?
I try. I mean, I think about it a lot, and I always try to ensure that I as a skater, I try to make the decisions that I think a skater would want. And I still buy my skates and I still buy frames and wheels to test and things like that. I always want what's right for the skaters. And I think that, if I can continue to do that, I think we'll always be successful.
You mentioned about not going to do any more reviews, obviously, because now you're on your own skates. But it will be very interesting to see now that you have a full understanding of skates. It will be way more strict when you're gonna go do a review of skates now, right?
Yeah, the biggest thing actually was the UFS mounting. I am a big stickler for skates having the proper UFS standard. And it was hard for us because we have the mold has the UFS split built in. So in the shell, it's kind of hard to see here, but you can see the inside of the shell uses our mounting piece. That is 167 millimeters. So from point 1 to point 2, 167 millimeters, that's the UFS standard. And we got some skates that were 165 and my frames fit, but barely. And I was like, why are they off? And the reason was when the skates were made, when they cooled, they shrunk a little bit. So we had to make it so that the mounting plate could move around a little bit, 1 millimeter forward, 1 millimeter backwards, so that if there were any shrinkage, when you mount that sole plate on, it would form it up to 167 millimeters. That's one of the things that I would always give companies grief over, because it's like, get the measurements right. There are still some companies that aren't aware of it and aren't doing it on purpose, but a lot of companies are doing it on purpose, trying to get the numbers right, and it is hard to do. So I definitely, eat my words now that that I know how difficult it is to get that tolerance dialed in as accurately as you need it.
You already went when you decided to design the mounting system and also the sole plate. You already had that in mind already. You already knew that and how to avoid that.
Yeah, well, not how to avoid it. I didn't realize that it was a problem until I think the third round of samples, and it was a little different. We wanted to do that 3-piece mounting system from the beginning. I came up with an idea way back when we were doing the UFS or the USD thrones with the original 50/50 frames, to use what we called a U-bolt, which is, very similar to the bridge hardware that them uses now. It's a flat piece of aluminum with 2 screw, outlets. And the reason is that won't spin. There's nothing worse than a sole plate, and you're tightening a sole plate or loosening a sole plate, and the T-nut inside the boot starts spinning around, and you're like, what do I do now? I can't loosen it. I can't tighten it. It's just toast. So you have to get a wrench and pry it in there somehow, and then, or drill it out for, hours. So we wanted to do that. And then adding a third one in the middle only made sense. Adapt does it already with their system. And it was like, well, this is like, you couldn't look away. That was the right way to do it. 4 bolts to mount the sole plate onto the skate, and then 2 bolts that go through the sole plate into the boot, so that you have a really strong mounting system for the frames.
Yeah, and there is no problem with that at all, right? You already tested it. I mean, of course, there is no problem, but yeah.
Yeah, we've been skating them. I mean, we've been skating these skates for 6 months without any issues. The team has been skating them now for a month, and yeah, they have no issues. The only feedback that they've had is some of the the shrinkage that we got from the samples that they got were very rushed. We wanted to make sure that they got skates quickly. Production skates are different than sample skates. The main difference is when they're making skates, you need to, they have the molds. You need to wait for the molds to get to temperature. And typically, like making pancakes, you've got to throw out a few boots while you're making them. The first one is never going to be perfect. The structure is going to be different. The cooling is going to be different. It takes like 20 to 30 skates before the pieces that start coming out of the mold are dialed in properly, that the tolerance is good. That's something that, because these initial samples that they're skating, they're a little bit different. So they had some feedback up here in this lacing area that this area was a little tight. No issues around the bottom, but the area around the lacing all the way at the top was a little tight. So we've sent that feedback to the factory. They've made some tweaks already to widen that up, and that's how they'll do it with production.
I see. We're reaching 1 hour now. I think it's up to you. We can keep going, but I have just a couple of more questions to you.
Please.
One is related to entry skates. To let's see, make the cost of the skates much lower. Do you think, you mentioned about one of your gear talks, you mentioned about you might have in the future the idea to do a sole frame. And it made me think that a sole frame mode is just one, instead of being 2 modes, it's just one.
That's right.
I think, do you think in the future, or maybe in the near future, we could see like a Aeon type of skate as an entry skate, a solution for very cheap entry skate because of that, because having just one mode instead of having 4, like you know what I mean?
I would hope so. We haven't done anything yet, and I hope to announce something next year, probably like 2025. We're full steam ahead with the sole plates and the frames that we have now. This was a huge investment. So making money back from this project, we've got to pay off the molds before we can do anything new. We are doing a smaller size. So we have 4 shell sizes now. We're going to do an extra small, which is like a size 38. So that's definitely something that we're going to find the money for. But future projects, I mean, we've got a lot of good ideas. I do think that eliminating the amount of pieces that need to be molded, I mean, obviously that will keep the costs down. It might make it lighter. It might make it more responsive. I don't know if it's the right thing, but it's something that we definitely want to test. And if we can do it, then I mean, if we can get that cost down and if we can make a better product as a result, I mean, we can always offer a sole plate that's UFS for people who need it. But if the skates come stock with a sole frame instead, and it's $50 less, I think a lot of people are going to be excited about that.
Yeah, you can reduce the cost quite a lot, I believe. I'm not sure about it.
I think so.
I believe you are aware about these new angle sole plates. They're quite expensive, and I also think that that's not it's machined out of a block of a material, right? That belief that adapts at the same. It's a machine out of the block. Is that a more expensive process to get in a mold?
Well, it's more expensive per piece, but it's cheaper to get started. A frame mold typically around $6,000 to $7,000, and then pieces. You can sell frames for $60. So assume that the frames are $10 to $15 per piece when per pair when you get them made. That's just obviously the numbers vary a little bit, but just if you were trying to estimate costs, that's about what you were looking at. If you were going to sell 1,000 pair of frames, then it makes sense. The amount that you invested in a mold, you'll easily make that money back from your first production run. And then everything after that, you can make money on every part. If you're not going to sell 1,000 frames though, how long is it going to take you to cover that cost? And I think that's where machining comes in. I think that's why Adapt does it, because they're handmade. They're very niche. They're very high end, and they want the best of the best. Molded parts are great, but they want a very specific feel. I have a feeling that the Angled Soul team wants to get a product out there, and in the future they've mentioned that they want to do a mold. It's just going to take some money. It's an expensive endeavor, especially if you're doing a soul plate, because you have a left and a right. If you were just making a frame, you could just do one frame, one size. You could do an additional size, but you could cover 4 shell sizes with 2 molds, whereas with a soul frame or a soul plate, you've got 1 for each boot. That's tough. And they have, there's no standard there. They have soul designs for 909s, for Mesmers, for, I would assume, a bunch of other skates. That's a lot of molds. So we did open source our soul design. So we've got this this thing that is like the jig. So this is the base of our skate. And you can get this. I'm actually hoping to put it up this weekend. My in-laws came in town a day early, so I was going to work on it tonight, but I'll probably work on it tomorrow. You could take this, put it in your 3D rendering software, and put this in your soul plate that you've designed for a different skate. Use this as a cutout, and it comes out and hollows it out on the inside so that you can slide it right onto our Omni skate. So if you wanted to make a soul plate for the Omni, all that you would need to do is download the tools and then slap it right in there. That might make development a little bit easier. I know that people spend a lot of time trying to get those measurements dialed in so that they're perfect, and then they have to get the skates and then put them on, and then if they're off by a little bit, it's difficult to align it and tweak it. That's something that I'm hoping by open sourcing it, more people will experiment with soul designs, and then maybe more soul options out there. Maybe 3D printing, maybe Adapt is do some machining, or someday maybe somebody does a mold. And if it would be a dream to have a third-party soul plate out there, a molded third-party soul plate, because it means that we're selling so many skates that there's a market for it.
Yeah. the angle soles, they look amazing, but when it comes to top sides, it kind of it worries me, because top sides, if you don't go straight in the right position, you just go straight, right? You're gonna pass through. And then your soul plates is actually angled to the other side, right?
So it catches you a little bit. It's kind of hard to see on this, but you can kind of see that up there. Okay, so you can see that it's up there. So it's higher here, and then it angles out kind of like that way. And the reason for that is when you're locking on, it gives you a bit more area that you're going to slide yourself in. Top sides. I don't do top sides very well, but the team has said that these skates are just incredible for doing top sides. So I will take their word for it. It is something that I'm looking to get better at. I don't know. I've never skated those angled soles. I don't want to say that they're good or that they're bad. I know that our design works really well, and I welcome other people coming out with new designs. I mean, again, like we talked about earlier in the show, huge thanks to Andy and Matthias for trying all these crazy things over the years. Some of them worked really well, and they were huge successes. Some of them were not. And we learned as an industry by their experimentation. We wouldn't have the Omni if there weren't decades of experimentation leading up to it.
Yeah, definitely. When it comes to, I asked those questions about the how much it costs to do a machine soul plate, because people talking about say, oh, that's too expensive, $400 for soul plates, and then so you explain very well what might be the reason why they're doing it, and materials, it's important as well to have and the importance to have people doing this so we can get a lot of mistakes out of the way. Future developers will be able to to design better things based on the mistakes from the past, right?
Totally. Yeah. That's how we improve as an industry. That's how gear gets better.
Yeah, definitely. Well, today is Saturday, so I don't want to take more of your
Yeah,
time.
no problem. Thank you for your
Yeah,
time.
yeah, and in Brazil there were not much people on the live, few people, but that's a very sensitive time in Brazil right now. That's like 7 o'clock
No problem.
Saturday, so people
No
are
worries.
partying. Like when we talked to Nicole Machado,
Oh, yeah.
Nicole Machado,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. So we had a episode with her, and so along the episode, I wanted to talk to her dad because her dad was in that viral video of her doing a soul ride on this huge rail, and then
Mhm.
she was very emotional, and they hugged at the end of
Yeah, I've
the
seen that.
video. So I wanted to talk to her dad, and also it was Saturday night when we were recording with her.
Right.
So I said, "So can I talk to your dad?" And she's like, "Oh, my dad was just here 5 minutes ago, but he went out with my mom. They went clubbing." I was like, oh,
Yep.
"Okay." So Saturday
Remember,
night in Brazil, yeah.
yeah, I've been to Rio de Janeiro twice. They were for judging the Latinx games. And I
Mhm.
remember going out afterwards in Ipanema, which was a beautiful area. And
Yeah.
they went late. Like our area
Um,
around our hotel wasn't great, was a little sketchy. It felt like
yeah.
Ipanema was just a beautiful, beautiful area. And yeah, they would go hard. I mean, there were all ages, all different
Yeah.
type
Yeah.
of people out all hours of the night, just having a blast.
I think Rio is the huge. The thing about Rio is the contrast, like you say. Like
Mhm.
you can walk 2 blocks and then you feel like in a rich area, and then
Yeah.
another 2 blocks, they're like, "Oh man, I don't know, I'm not supposed to be here,"
Yes. That's what
Yeah.
our hotel guides told us. Like, we
Yeah.
would walk to this mall, and they were like, "This is the way that you walk to the mall. And if you walk
Yeah. Yeah.
another way, you might get in trouble." And we're like,
Yeah.
"Understood. You don't have to say more. Like, stay on this street. Okay, we'll do that."
Yeah, definitely. But
Beautiful
it's
area,
a very
though. I
beautiful,
missed it.
it, yeah, beautiful city. Yeah, I've been there once. I'm from
Mm.
actually countryside of Brazil. Like it's
Okay.
like in the mountains.
Okay.
But Rio, it's a beautiful area. Yeah,
Yeah, it
it's
really
a
is.
place that really good skaters from Rio as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a lot of good skaters though, but Brazil is so huge and also so apart from.
Yeah.
Even though in Brazil it's hard to find all the skaters to
Oh,
connect all
really?
of them. It's like U.S. I think in U.S. you guys
Yeah.
find better way to connect to each other than in Brazil. Like
It's social media has changed that a lot, but
yeah,
we
it
do
has.
have,
Yeah,
like, regional events. We have
yeah.
one coming up in April here in, North Carolina, where I live, that
Mhm.
should have, a couple hundred skaters come out, and it's
Yeah.
from all around the US, and it's amazing, like, skaters speaking the same language, doing the same tricks, but you don't know them, but you kind of already have that connection and you can already be
Mhm.
friendly with them because you're
Yeah,
just
yeah.
skaters. I that's what I love the most about skating.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So a lot of good skaters coming up in Brazil. Young ones like Nicole, and then there is one girl called Julia, Ana
Okay.
Julia. I
I don't
I
know her.
think she was in that Abelhinhas, which is like it's a group of kids in Brazil
Oh, yeah, uh-huh.
called Little
I know them.
Little
Yeah, yeah.
Bees.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's came from that, and her story it's very amazing that she come from a very poor family, and then now
Mm,
she's being sponsored by a huge company in Brazil,
that's
so we
awesome.
should be able to send her everywhere in the world for
Oh, that's
competition.
amazing.
Yeah, she needs to shop. I mean, she needs to get to. I mean, she's very good. She's very good for
Mhm.
her age. She's just 14, but
Wow.
she needs to, yeah, get a little better. Yeah, you
I
got.
mean, look at Nicole. She's a great example of it. Thais is killing it out here in the US. I don't know
Oh
how
yeah,
long
yeah.
she's in California, but just incredible. I mean, you guys have amazing skaters coming out.
I mean, it's female skaters. Yeah, history
I'm sure there's great
historically.
male skaters as well, but
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, for whatever reason, I mean, female skating in Brazil is very strong. Thank you,
Start.
Fab, for starting that.
And the story about Nicole Machado is quite interesting because when we spoke to her, she said that when she was very early, like very young, like 11 or 12 years old, or even younger,
Mhm.
she was suffering from really deep depression,
Mm,
and doctor recommended her to do some activity, like a
mhm.
physical activity. So that's why she chose to
Oh, that's
skate.
awesome.
And then her father, on the top of that, said, so why don't you start recording yourself and speaking to yourself to the camera and put on YouTube to get your,
Nice.
get better, like
Yep.
you're too shy or whatever. And then, yeah, that's how it started. And then she met Felipe Zambardino, like the big Zamba, the big name here in Brazil. And then they start skating together. He started teaching her how to do aggressive. And that was like only 3 years ago. And
now what? Pro skate, pro wheels, pro
yeah.
bearings. I mean, 200,000,
right?
300,000 Instagram. I mean, she's incredible.
Yeah, go fast, right? Change.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
She's such a sweet girl. Yeah,
she seems really nice. Yeah, I haven't spoken or met her, but she seems really great.
She's very mature for her age. Talking to her is like not talking to a teenager at all. She's very mature. She understands how YouTube works. She understands what she needs to be a professional skater, what people expect from her. It's amazing to talk to her. Maybe it's obviously a parenting and also Zamba being with her since she was younger, and then so she
has good influences. I big future, if you ask me.
Big future, yeah, that's right. Thanks very much for this.
Absolutely, yeah. Have a great afternoon and enjoy your day.
I'm looking forward to your skates. As soon as they're here, I'll make a review.
I can't wait for the feedback. You're gonna have to give me the review after the first session. A few clips.
Definitely.
Cool.
Thanks a lot.
Have a good one. No problem.
Have a good one, man.
Bye.
See you. Bye. Bom, galera, eu acho que não tinha muita gente aí no chat, não. Ainda bem, que eu não fico nervoso falando inglês. Mas é isso aí. Foi com o Lawrence. Eu vou tentar cortar alguns pedaços dessa entrevista e colocar em português. Foi muito importante ele explicar aí por que o patins dele é um pouco diferente dos outros patins que saíram aí. E legal, cara. Muito obrigado vocês que ficaram aí. E grande abraço e até a próxima.